In many ways, little changed at Longbourn after Mrs. Frances Bennet departed it. With her brother Jonathan now present, Elizabeth's duties had decreased, and she had greater opportunities to apply herself to learning traditional feminine accomplishments. A piano master was hired to teach all four ladies, including Charlotte when she had time. Kitty requested a drawing master, and while Elizabeth and Mary both attended lessons, Kitty showed the greatest aptitude in that area. Likewise, all four ladies regularly gathered in Grandmamma Bennet's sitting room to improve their skills in sewing and embroidery. They had all mastered the basic techniques, but none had previously found the time to devote to the finer details of these crafts. Under their grandmother's guidance, they began to refine their stitches and explore more intricate patterns, learning not merely for the sake of accomplishment, but for the satisfaction of creating beautiful, lasting pieces. They often sewed for the poor and for their tenants, and spent time throughout the year sewing useful items for the Christmas boxes gifted to the tenants on Boxing Day. These sessions also became a time for reflection and conversation. The older lady, with her wealth of experience, offered both technical advice and personal insights, making the gatherings as much about bonding as about skill building. Elizabeth, however, found herself enjoying these moments more than she had expected, though her preference for the outdoors often led her to step outside when the weather allowed. One afternoon, as they worked in the sitting room, Elizabeth sighed and glanced out of the window at the beautiful day. "I do enjoy the time spent in this room, but I must admit a brisk walk in the garden or a ride through the fields calls to me more than these needles ever will. I'm glad I took my walk early this morning, for I cannot abide sitting so long otherwise." Charlotte, seated nearby and diligently working on her embroidery, smiled softly. "I cannot say I disagree, Elizabeth, but I have learned to appreciate these tasks. There is a certain peace in creating something with one's hands. Of course, the conversation is also much appreciated." Mary, focused on her own work, nodded in agreement. "Indeed. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. I never realized I would enjoy it as much as I have, and appreciate this opportunity to spend time with my sisters and grandmother. Mamma preferred for us to remain in the nursery unless she had some need of us." Kitty laughed lightly. "I think I would rather be out riding as well, or drawing. But I must admit I enjoy the time spent with all of you, especially you, Grandmamma." Observing them with a smile, Grandmamma Bennet spoke from her spot near the fire. "It is a good balance, I think. A time for reflection and a time for action. We can all learn much from each other, whether in the house or out in the field." Elizabeth turned to her grandmother, her expression warm with gratitude. "You are right, Grandmamma. Although my heart always yearns for the open air, I shall try to appreciate these moments more fully. After all, the conversation here is certainly more engaging, for Horace rarely answers my questions." She laughed softly at her own remark, glancing at the mastiff her brother had purchased to accompany her on her countryside walks. A footman was usually tasked with following her, but Elizabeth often preferred the quiet companionship of the dog alone. As they continued working, the conversation shifted to the books each of them was reading. The younger girls were particularly interested in the novels and histories that Elizabeth often shared, and their governess, upon discovering the depth of their discussions, began joining the sewing sessions. She found the conversation as enriching for her own knowledge as it was for her charges. The ladies' time together strengthened both their skills and their bond. Their sewing also served a charitable purpose, benefiting those who lived both at Longbourn or Netherfield. Elizabeth had never known her maternal grandfather, who had lived at Netherfield until his death, and she was unsure who owned the estate now. Just the day before, she overheard her brother mention a new occupant arriving soon. For as long as she could remember, her grandmother had visited the tenants there, a practice Elizabeth now continued. "I wonder who will be taking up residence at Netherfield," Elizabeth mused, as all the ladies sat sewing in her grandmother's dower house. She paused speaking for a moment as she focused on threading her needle. Charlotte glanced up from her embroidery, her expression thoughtful. "I suppose change is always a bit unsettling, since we do not know who this person is. Still, it may be a pleasant thing to have new neighbours."